Now, have y'all ever wondered how some of the really great tires out there can wrap a nearly perfect dry fly hackle? Well, I've wondered that too, so I'm going to show you one technique for how you can do that today. But before I do that, I'm going to tell you why I usually don't do it. And the first reason is I'm usually tying flies for fishing, not filling up shadow boxes or taking pretty pictures to post on Instagram. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing that, and I do love making a good shadow box. And some of the artistry that some of these tires out there on Instagram are showing, it's truly amazing. I'm really in awe of it. But it's a rare case that a perfectly tied fly is going to catch more fish than a normally tied one. So the second reason is it's just a little bit more work for not a whole lot more reward. And the last thing I want to point out is that a perfectly tied, perpendicular, really crisp hackle, to me it looks a little bit more artificial. I mean, we're already tying fake bugs, so why do we want to make them even more artificial looking? So this technique, I'm going to demonstrate it on just a generic mayfly dun. And the one I'm going to tie, I'm going to use some blue wing olive color, so we can call this dry fly blue wing olive if you want. So the pattern itself, nothing special, but this technique of how to wrap a really crisp, clean looking dry fly hackle, it's not a bad technique to know how to do. So I hope you like it. Let's give it a shot. So there we go in the vise, just a very plain, common, generic, actually kind of boring. So let's spice this one up just a little bit. I'm going to change the color on it, maybe add a rib. We'll go with a kind of a blue wing olive theme. That's size 12, 1x long barbless dry fly hook. And I'm going to use black thread on this one. That last one was done, but let's go with the black this time. Now for the tail, I'm going to put something long and dark and kind of stiff. This is moose body hair. 4 hairs from moose body. I'm going to go pretty long here. It's not really a catskill style fly, but we'll put a long tail like it is. Catch it in right back there. If it flares up a little bit, I think that's kind of good. But my goal here is really just to keep these these hairs parallel to the hook as I wrap my body up here to keep it smooth. And don't go too far. I would say between 2/3 and maybe a half, because we're going to have to put a lot of hackle on this with the technique we're about to use. And you know what? I forgot. I'm going to do a thread rib. I forgot to leave a tag on it. So you can either tie in an extra piece of thread or just create a little dubbing loop that we're not going to use as a dubbing loop. We're just going to use it for a rib. But that'll be just fine. Okay, so I got this little loop right here. I'm going to kind of spin it together a little bit and then park it to the side with my magnet. Now let's put some wax on our thread before we put the dubbing on it. And I'm going to use a Superfine dry fly dubbing. And this one is actually the color it's called, blue wing olive. So I'm going to kind of put this on pretty thin. And maybe a good sized noodle. I can always pull it off before I'm done if I have too much on here. Usually whenever I have to ask myself if I have too much dubbing, the answer is probably yes. But that's just me. So let's get that started in right back there. Okay, that's going to be fine. Now, a little bit, tighten it up a little bit. If I can get a taper here, that's great. If not, don't worry about it. And I certainly did put way too much dubbing on there. That's as far up as I want my body. So what I'll do here, I'll just pull this off my thread and then catch it off, just like I was wrapping material. Okay, let's bury this with a couple extra wraps. Now I'm just going to wrap this rib up. Make sure these two thread pieces are spun together a little bit. This isn't going to do a whole lot for it, but I think it will just give the body a little bit of segmentation and make it a little less boring. Now here's the part what I really wanted to talk about. Okay, as good a feather as you can get, and we're going to, instead of just stripping off the end where we catch it in, we're going to strip off the first several inches of one side. So in effect, we're really only wrapping half of this feather here. And this isn't super high quality hackle. It is a whiting from a whiting half cape, but it's a bronze grade, so it's not terribly expensive. And my goal right here is going to be to catch this in. Let's get it kind of perpendicular here. I need to catch it a little farther back than that. Because remember, the normal hackle might take 4 or 5 wraps. This one could take up to 10. So, alright, I've caught that in. I'm trying to keep it perpendicular to my hook. Let's put a wrap right behind it. Okay, and now what I'll do, I'm going to leave this stem in place and then try to catch it in parallel to my hook shank right here, which will help keep a smooth underbody or under thorax area right there. So let's go ahead and snip that off. You might have a little nub right there, so I'm going to use a few extra thread wraps to just try to keep this smooth. And I'm going to leave my thread pretty far forward, and I'm going to start wrapping right back here. And my goal is going to be these stems, this quill, one wrap right next to the other with these barbs from the hackle coming off perpendicular to it. So you'll see it might take 8, 9, even 10 wraps to get us up there. Okay, now I should have mentioned this before. Make sure you've got your tweezers ready, because we're going to pull off a few of these fibers before we catch off this stem. So I've still got tension on this feather, pulling it up, and I'm going to grab maybe the bottom 4 or 5 right here. Okay, I think we got enough of them. But what we've effectively done is we've created a place where we can catch this stem off without trapping too many extra fibers going forward. Okay, now let's just try to put a few wraps right here to smooth up this head, and I'm trying not to let myself get too carried away. I don't necessarily, want the smallest head ever, but I just want enough room to put a whip finish without trapping any of these fibers going forward. So clean up on a fly like this, just taking a look at it. If you've got any rogue fibers going forward or back, just take your tweezers and pluck them out. But in this case, I think we're fine. So there you go, folks. Just one technique of how to get, really perpendicular hackle coming off your dry flies. And it's not too difficult. Just have to take your time. So I appreciate you watching, everybody. Y'all take care, and we'll see you next time.